All right, so today we're doing a deep dive into something I think you're going to find pretty fascinating. It's called the Airwareness Support app.
And it's really cool. Basically what this app does is it's a free and open source web-based tool. And it can simulate and assess airborne infection risks. So you know those little pathogens that are floating around in the air making people sick?
Yeah, I know them well. I think we've all gotten to know them a little too well over the last few years.
Exactly. Well, this app kind of pulls back the curtain and lets you see how those pathogens spread.
Yeah.
In any indoor environment you can imagine.
Yeah.
And it uses something called the Wells-Riley model to do that.
Ooh, Wells-Riley. That sounds a little bit intimidating.
It does, right? But it's actually a very well-established model. It's been used for decades. And it's pretty simple once you break it down.
Okay, well then break it down for us. What is the Wells-Riley model?
Okay, so imagine you're in a room, and someone in that room is infected with a virus. Maybe they're coughing or just breathing. And they're releasing these tiny infectious particles into the air. The Wells-Riley model helps us figure out how likely it is that other people in that room will breathe in those particles and get infected. It basically boils down to a few key factors, like how much ventilation there is in the room, how long people are exposed, and how infectious the virus is.
Makes sense. So the app takes this model and visualizes it.
Exactly. It's like watching a tiny, dangerous snow globe. You can actually see how the pathogens spread through the air. You can watch how ventilation affects things, how room size plays a role, even how different activities impact the risk.
Okay, now that's what I'm talking about. That's the kind of stuff that makes this deep dive worthwhile, being able to see the invisible, right? So how does this visualization work? Like, what am I actually looking at in the app?
So the app uses these little red dots to represent quanta. Yeah, quanta. Think of a quanta as like a packet of virus particles. Basically, one quanta is the amount of virus needed to have about a 63% chance of infecting someone who breathes it in.
Okay, so those little red dots are bad news.
Got it. Yeah, you don't want to be surrounded by a lot of red dots, that's for sure. But the cool thing is, you can adjust different parameters in the app and see how those changes affect the spread of the quanta.
Like what?
Well, you could crank up the ventilation and watch those red dots vanish faster.
Oh, I like the sound of that.
It's really amazing to see how quickly fresh air can dilute those nasty particles. Or you could change the size of the room or the number of people in it. You can even simulate different activities, like talking or singing, and see how those activities impact the concentration of quanta in the air.
So I could basically test out different scenarios and see which ones are the riskiest.
Exactly. It's like a virtual lab for air quality. You can experiment and see how different factors interact, and learn how to create safer, healthier indoor environments.
I'm already starting to think about all the places I want to simulate. My office, the gym, even my kids' school.
Yeah, it really gets you thinking, doesn't it? And that's the whole point, to make us more aware of the air we're breathing.
Yeah.
And empower us to make informed decisions about our health.
Well, mission accomplished, I'd say. I'm definitely more aware now. But before we get too carried away with all these fascinating details, can you remind us again how this app is connected to the Wells-Riley model?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the Wells-Riley model, it takes into account all those factors we were just talking about, like ventilation rate, exposure time, infectiousness of the pathogen, and it uses a mathematical equation to calculate the probability of infection. So the app is basically a visual representation of that equation.
Oh, I see. So it's taking all that complex math and making it easy to understand.
Exactly. It's like a bridge between the science and the real world.
And that's what makes it so powerful, right?
Absolutely. It's not just for scientists or engineers. It's for anyone who wants to understand and improve the air they're breathing.
Well, I'm definitely in that category, and I'm sure our listeners are too. So let's keep exploring this Airwareness support app. We've just scratched the surface.
Agreed. There's a lot more to uncover.
And after the break, we'll dive into some of the more specific features of the app, like ACH and CFM and the occupant management system. Those are some really cool tools.
Oh yeah, we'll get into the nitty-gritty and help you understand how you can use this app to make real changes in your own life.
Sounds good. We'll be back in a flash.
See you soon.
Hey there, listeners. If you're enjoying today's episode, check out our previous episodes where we dive deep into fascinating topics in scientific research and more. Don't forget to tell your friends and family about Heliox. Back to Heliox, where evidence meets empathy. All right, so we're back and ready to get a bit more technical with this Airwareness support app. One of the things that caught my eye was all the stuff about ACH and CFM. Those sound kind of like secret codes to me.
Yeah, they can be a bit jargony.
Yeah.
But they're actually pretty straightforward once you understand what they mean.
Okay, so enlighten me.
So ACH stands for air changes per hour. It basically tells you how many times per hour the entire volume of air in a room gets replaced with fresh air.
Oh, I see. So like if I open a window, that would increase the ACH.
Exactly. Opening a window, running a fan, or having a good ventilation system can all increase the ACH.
Makes sense. And what about CFM?
CFM stands for cubic feet per minute per person. This one's all about how much fresh air each individual's getting.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of like a personal ventilation rate.
Exactly. The higher the CFM, the more fresh air each person is breathing in, which means the less likely they are to inhale those nasty little quanta we were talking about.
Oh, right. Those quantas. I'm starting to see how all this connects.
Yeah, it's all about creating an environment where those quantas get diluted as quickly as possible.
So higher ACH and CFM are good things, right?
Generally speaking, yes. The more fresh air, the better, especially when it comes to reducing the risk of airborne infections.
I'm starting to feel like I need to go open all the windows in my house right now.
Oh, maybe not all of them. But it's definitely a good reminder to think about ventilation.
Speaking of thinking about things, I was also really intrigued by this occupant management system in the app. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Absolutely. So the occupant management system is all about recognizing that different groups of people can have different impacts on air quality.
Oh, interesting. Like how so?
Well, think about kids versus adults. Kids tend to breathe faster than adults. They have smaller lungs, and they're often more active. So they can actually release more of those quanta into the air.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, it's a factor that a lot of people overlook. But the app lets you account for those differences, so you can get a more accurate assessment of the risk in different settings.
That's really cool. It's like the app is thinking about all the things I never would have considered.
It's designed to be as comprehensive as possible, to really give you a deep understanding of the factors that influence air quality.
Well, I have to say, I'm impressed. This app is way more than I was expecting.
It's a powerful tool, that's for sure.
But with all this talk about simulations and models, I have to ask, how accurate is this app really?
That's a great question. And it's important to remember that any model is only as good as the data you put into it. So if you're not accurate with your inputs, your results won't be accurate either.
Makes sense. So garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly.
So what kind of data do I need to be careful about?
Well, things like the dimensions of the room, the ventilation details, the characteristics of the pathogen you're simulating, all of that stuff needs to be as accurate as possible.
Okay, good to know. But even with perfect inputs, there are still limits to what any model can predict.
Of course, this app is not a crystal ball. It can't tell you exactly who's going to get sick and when.
Right.
It's more about providing a long-term average risk assessment for a given space.
So it's a tool for understanding the big picture, not necessarily for predicting every little detail.
Exactly. It's about empowering you to make informed decisions about air quality, to take proactive steps to reduce the overall risk of infection.
It sounds like this app is really shifting our mindset from one of passivity to one of active engagement with our environment.
That's a great way to put it.
We're not just victims of the air we breathe.
We can actually understand it, shape it, and improve it.
It's like we're taking back control.
And that's pretty empowering, isn't it?
It is. I'm starting to see the air in a whole new light.
That's the beauty of this app. It opens your eyes to something that's always been there, but that we often take for granted.
Well, I'm definitely not taking it for granted anymore. This conversation has been incredibly insightful.
I'm glad to hear that.
And I think it's really going to resonate with our listeners. But before we wrap up, I'm curious, what's been the most surprising or insightful aspect of the Airwareness support app for you?
You know, for me, it's the way it demystifies a complex topic and makes it accessible to everyone. We often talk about the importance of air quality, but this app actually shows you what's going on, how different factors interact, and how you can make a difference. It's not just about science. It's about empowering people to take control of their health.
I love that. And I'm inspired to start making changes in my own life. I hope you are too. Remember, knowledge is power. And with the Airwareness support app, that power is now in your hands.
Yeah, it really is empowering to have that knowledge you know, and then actually be able to do something with it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not some expensive proprietary software like we talked about. This is free, it's open source, and it's always evolving.
And that open source part is huge, right? Because anyone can contribute to it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, so anybody listening right now, they can go in and suggest improvements.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can suggest improvements, you can actually look at the code, and you can even contribute to the code yourself. It's a real community effort to make this app better. So it's like we're all part of this big movement towards better air, right?
We really are. We are all breathing the same air. We all have a stake in this.
You know, we talk so much about clean water and safe food, but air often gets overlooked.
And it's just as important, maybe even more so.
Yeah, when you think about it, we can go a few days without food or water, but we can only go a few minutes without air.
Exactly. And it's not just about survival either. The quality of the air we breathe has a huge impact on our health and well-being.
Like how so?
Well, studies have shown that good indoor air quality can improve cognitive function. So you think more clearly, you're more focused.
Ooh, I like the sound of that.
And it can reduce stress and boost productivity too.
Wow, so cleaner air can actually make us smarter, calmer, and more productive.
There's a growing body of evidence to support that.
Absolute.
It really is remarkable how much air quality affects us.
It is. It really is. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. From the Wells-Riley model to Quanta to ACH and CFM, I feel like I've learned a whole new language.
And hopefully you've gained a new appreciation for the air you breathe.
Definitely have. But if our listeners could only take away one thing from this whole conversation, what would it be?
I'd say the biggest takeaway is that you have the power to control the air you breathe. It's not just something you have to accept. You can understand it, you can shape it, and you can improve it.
And the Airwareness support app is the perfect tool to help us do that.
Absolutely. It's like having a personal air quality consultant right in your pocket.
So to our listeners, if you're ready to take control of your indoor air quality, head over to airsupportproject.com to try the Airwareness support app for yourself. You might be surprised at what you discover.
And you might even be inspired to contribute to the project.
That's a great point. This is a community effort, and we can all play a role in making the air we breathe cleaner and healthier. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty energized after this deep dive.
You too.
It's amazing how something as simple as air can have such a profound impact on our lives.
Absolutely.
So let's all go out there and breathe a little easier, knowing that we have the tools and the knowledge to make a difference.
I'm with you on that.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the Airwareness support app.
It was my pleasure.
And remember, knowledge is power. And with the Airwareness support app, that power is now in your hands.